Daniel Seto, what is your favorite game?
My favorite game is Final Fantasy VII. Well, I'm trying to think now. What originally, my first experience, my first time I ever touched a video game, from what I can remember, it was when I must have been, I guess maybe 4 or 5 years old. Basically, my granddad bought myself and my brother. It was around Christmas. He got us an NES and a Game Boy. We had our Game Boys slightly earlier, and I remember it came with Tetris bundled in, and we also got a game. I think it was a Bugs Bunny game, which was actually not, looking back at it, not a very good game. But when you're kids, you don't know what a good game really is. So
Sure.
I just played it over and over again. Yeah, my brother would swap between our cartridges and stuff. So yeah, probably those two games, Bugs Bunny and Tetris, were my first my first video game that I ever played. And with our NES that we shared, we got it was with the Duck Hunt and Super Mario combo. And then ever since then, I've always played video games. I mean, as a kid, I was never really one to go outside and play. I wasn't very sporty. We didn't live that close to where we went to school, so like all my school friends were like dotted about. So I was quite on my own. My parents worked a lot, so I was left to my own devices a lot growing up. And yeah, video games were just something for me to do for most of my life.
Like further down the line, then, like as you were growing up, like what after that?
Well, basically, yeah, it basically progressed because my brother was quite similar to me in that, yeah, we basically just we would just play games growing up. We played a lot of games together, as well as single play games. And so as we grew up, we were always, we were fortunate enough. Usually it was, a joint Christmas birthday present kind of thing that we would, get games consoles. So we were kind of up to date with what was going on, and we always shared our consoles and our games. And it was I guess I suppose you'd say my social situation never really changed that much. My school was always far away, so I was on my own playing games. So yeah, after NES, my brother got a Mega Drive, I got a Super Nintendo, years down the line. And video games, yeah, we just kept playing. We were really always into games, but we never, how to put it? It was more like we saw them more as toys, kind of thing like that. You play it and then you just, for fun. It wasn't any kind of emotional resonance. I know we played some amazing games, all the Marios, Zeldas up to that point, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we just played and played growing up, and it was part of our lives. And I think our family kind of recognized it. We always go out, we save up our pocket money to buy games. We buy game magazines. We, always stay up to date with what was coming out. Even though as a medium, we didn't quite, I don't want to say understand it, but, we just, as I mentioned before, we played them out, we saw them as toys and just played for the pure enjoyment of it. But it was something, yeah, we always had in the household. You
mentioned the Mario and Zelda experience. Like, what other games were you playing at that time, like growing up?
Oh man, basically, if you can consider them like a big game at a time, then yeah, that was basically what we played. We played almost every, because back in the day as well, that was when Blockbuster was still a big thing. So renting games was common. Yeah. So, we'd rent a lot of stuff. So apart from there's all the big hitters. I remember playing, a lot of Star Wing, playing a lot of, Mario Karts, or the, Sonic the Hedgehogs, Rocky Knight Adventures. Oh man, love that game. One of my favorite games, actually going back, talking about the NES, my favorite games of all time, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, one of the first, and Mickey and Donald World of Illusion on the Mega Drive. They were like quintessential co-op. I say co-op. multiplayer games that I used to play with my brother all the time. And even though in both those games you could just troll each other, because in Chip and Dale you just pick each other up and just throw each other in a pit, and that's basically all we did. To the point where you get really angry at each other and you stop playing, and then like 20 minutes later, like, do you want to play again? Like, yeah, okay. And then the same thing happens. You just throw each other in a pit. And then Mickey and Donald World of Illusion, when you use the the weapons, the capes on each other, the other character kind of twists into a knot and stuns them. And then, we wait time, so there's a jump. And then, so if you hit the person just before they jump, they'll go in the air, but they can't really move because they're all in the knot. And then you fall into a pit and die. And we would just troll each other so bad. To the point, where we stopped talking to each other for like half an hour. And then, of course, later that evening, like, do you want to play again? Yeah, okay. It's such good games. Oh, I love them. But yeah, basically any big game, or even small games, they were like, we've played so much. It's hard. I've never actually really thought about it for a long time, like what we used to play back in those days.
No, it's a fascinating insight, because like I've never really played that many Disney tie-in games, like you said with Chip and Dale and Mickey Mouse. I'm quite sad now. I never played that Chip and Dale game when you put it like that.
Oh, mate, so good, so good. I bet you could play it today and it still holds up. It's the classic, because that's the thing about these old games, because they're quite distilled, especially platformers. If the controls are tight, then the level designs are good, then those games are pretty much timeless.
Like keeping it simple and fresh after all this time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you probably wouldn't play it as much as a kid, as that I did back in the day. But you can play it and be like, oh yeah, this is actually good fun. Yeah, and you can have a mess around with it.
Yeah, like just basically go back to every once a few years. Just say, you know what, this was fun. This is fun even now. So moving on slightly down from that. What about PlayStation and PlayStation? Oh well, obviously PlayStation, because we're talking about Final Fantasy VII. But like, what about other experiences at that time?
The PlayStation. I'm going to be honest. The PlayStation era was when I was starting, I was becoming a teenager, I suppose. So I was getting, growing up a bit. And of course, the whole 3D era, and then it was the 90s as well. So, you know what I mean? It was like, if anyone, if you remember what the 90s were like, it's all that, I suppose, attitude and all that kind of stuff. And I remember not necessarily being blown away by anything, in particular, but it was just, I guess, transition into like a new gen and kind of new tech. I remember just playing lots of games where I'm trying to formulate this into words now. It was like, I don't want to say like like tech demos and whatnot kind of stuff, but it was a lot of, especially back then, I couldn't afford, because games, as you grew up, your parents stopped giving you as much pocket money, because you're supposed to be like getting all independent and all that. Yeah. So I had to be a lot more selective on like kind of what I played. And I probably rented a lot more, but it was kind of throwaway kind of stuff, just to pass the time. For some reason, when I just said that, I popped in the head. I remember renting the game. Do you remember Pandemonium?
It doesn't ring a bell. No.
It was like a 2D platformer, but it was like a 3D graphics and stuff. It wasn't actually all that, even though it did there was a sequel, and I remember playing it at the time, thinking, oh yeah, it ain't all that. So I don't know why that popped into my mind. But then there's also all kinds of games, things like Jumping Flash. That was probably, I think, the first proper 3D game I played. We were lucky also to have, because my aunt at the time was living in Hong Kong, and she bought us for Christmas one time. She got us the Sega Saturn, and the Sega Saturn, obviously not being well known for its 3D prowess, had a lot of 2D games, like really, really great 2D games, especially fighting games. Oh, mate, so good. And that was basically where I spent a lot of my time playing, because, like I said, the 3D stuff, the PlayStation stuff was cool, but it wasn't necessarily much that really grabbed me until, further on into its lifespan, until really I played Final Fantasy VII. which basically changed everything for me. But before that, yeah, it was a mixture of, because, we didn't really get rid of any of our old consoles. So, I still had all my old games for my Super Nintendo. I still had, all the games on the Saturn that we were playing. Actually, I don't regret much in life, but one of my only life regrets is selling my NES. I really wish I didn't do that. I was a stupid kid for doing it. But anyway, yeah. So it was only until I played Final Fantasy VII that games really changed for me. Before that, it was, even up until that point, I just played games just basically because they were fun and I was killing time because I had nothing else to do and I didn't want to do any more homework. I did enough of that.
Who didn't?
Yeah.
We'll come back onto the PS1 era later on with Final Fantasy VII, obviously. But like as we got into the 2000s, like what was that like gaming wise for you, anyways?
Oh well, obviously that's after Final Fantasy VII came out.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, completely changed, because what 7 did, basically 7 opened my eyes to what video games could be. It was the first RPG I had ever played. And that showed me, that games could have big stories, they could have wonderful characters, unique settings, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you had that in other games before, especially like, I guess Legend of Zelda is one of my other favorite franchises. And, that has all that kind of stuff. But it didn't stick with me back then. It was only until I played Final Fantasy VII, then afterwards, especially after 7, then that was like JRPG Renaissance eras, because after that, because it was such a big hit, there was so many, especially, in Europe, Final Fantasy VII was the first Final Fantasy game released here. So after that, it kind of opened the floodgates for JRPGs. And after playing that, then I was like, oh my God, I want more of that. So, I looked up and played all kinds of RPG, Vandal Hearts, Grandia, Suikoden, you name it. And I just looked, I remember Suikoden 2 in particular, that was, oh my God, that is such an incredible game. And the only reason I bought it was because, one, it was a JRPG, and two, it had a tiny review in the back of CVG magazine, and they gave it 5 out of 5. Said it was a JRPG, and literally, I think the review itself was like a couple of hundred words. Told you basically nothing of the game, but it had 5 out of 5. It had one screenshot, and it was JRPG. I thought, oh, okay, that must be good. I like RPGs. I'll take a punt at it, and oh my God, it's amazing. And that was basically it. It was, and I guess as a kid, you're a little bit more wide-eyed, so I was a lot more, or maybe it was the time as well, but I was more open to just going into a shop and looking at a game and be like, you know what, I'll give that a shot. I don't necessarily care too much about the reviews or whatever. I'm just the box art looks nice, it sounds kind of cool, I'll give it a shot.
Just touch on how you first got into the industry side of things.
Luck. That's how I got in. It honestly, it's a really weird story. Basically, I finished uni. Well, I was in my final year at uni, and I was a bit bummed out with studies and stuff. Blah 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 blah. All that stuff that doesn't really matter. But I got into a gaming community on the website Destructoid.com, and through that, I got back in touch with an old school friend of mine. And we started talking, and through the community, because the community was really active. It was kind of like the dawn of when, video game communities were really big and started really forming. So, we found other people in the UK, especially in London. And it was around the time of the Play.com Expo, if you remember that.
Rings a bell.
Yeah, it was only a one-off thing, but
yes,
basically.
I remember now. Yeah.
It was like a precursor to the Eurogamer Expo before that. The event was actually pretty rubbish because all the 80% of the games they said would be there were not there. So we all went, and we started a good laugh, and we kind of decided afterwards that we kind of wanted to do more for the site, for Destructoid, that is. So I just started blogging, and I just started writing features and stuff for them. We formed kind of a UK team. We did our podcast together called Britoid, and it was all just for fun. all just for fun. Had no intention of taking it any further. It was just a hobby. And we covered Gamescom for them, because they're based in the States, saves them traveling over. And, I think we did a really good job. And through that, the person who was basically in charge of Destructoid UK, Holly Bennett, she obviously got talking to a lot of PR people, because that's what you do when you go to events. You talk to PR people to get appointments and whatnot. And a PR company just tweeted out that they were looking for an assistant publicist. Holly retweeted it. I saw it. I looked at the job spec and was like, man, that's pretty simple. I could do that. Hell, what? I've literally got nothing to lose. I was just doing dead-end jobs. I was working in retail or temping, just to pay rent. So I had no career on the horizon. So I was like, what have I got to lose? Wrote my CV, sent it off, came back home. Because at the time, at the time we still do. Holly and I are flatmates. So I came back home. We were just having a cup of tea or something. And I just said, I applied for that job at Premier PR, who are the PR company that tweeted out that they're looking for an assistant publicist. And I said, I applied for the job, see what happens. And she was like, oh, that's cool. Come back home the next day, and Holly tells me that she gave him a call and that they'll be in touch. I was like, what? I was like, oh, yeah, I've spoken to one of the account managers because, with stuff on Gamescom. I was like, I just name-checked you. And she was like, oh, they'll be in touch. Funny enough, next day, I got a phone call for an interview, went to that interview, and then I got the job. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I was like, that was just a completely off chance kind of thing. So yeah, that's how I got into the games industry. And then from there, I stayed at Premier for, I think, nearly 4 years doing games PR, for, a wide range of clients. So everybody from Warner Brothers to 2K, THQ to Rising Star, EA to Marvelous Entertainment. So yeah, loads of people. And then just on the off chance, I was at the time when towards the end of my time at Premier, Square Enix were one of our clients, and I did a lot of the PR for. I did some of the PR for some of their games, and I heard that they were hiring, and being such a Final Fantasy fanboy, I was like, oh my god. So I asked around. I applied for a job. Looking at the job spec, although it was a different job spec to what the jobs were going were different to what I thought was going. So I was like, got nothing to lose. I'll just ask. So I applied, somehow got through to an interview, got talking, and I never actually thought it would go anywhere. I was just chancing it. And then they called me up. They said, oh, the job, because I applied for a PR role, and they said, oh yeah, we don't think you're quite right for this PR role, but we have a community manager role, in our Square Enix Japan Studios department. Are you interested? And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, we think you'd be really good. And I was like, I've got no community manager experience. And they were like, that's fine. We think you're a great fit. Are you interested? I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm interested. As long as you know that I've got no experience, then I'm all for it. If I can do it. And then that was it. And that was how I joined Square. It was I almost just fumbled into it. It was just pure chance and luck.
That's all anything ever is. Nothing more than luck. As to paraphrase 500 Days of Summer. So there's your disclosure, by the way. Let's move on to your favourite game, Final Fantasy VII. So I realise I'm probably going to ask this question as if I'm talking to a brick wall here, knowing that I'll probably immediately realise this answer, but I'm going to ask this anyways. This was more or less everyone's first Final Fantasy experience, so I assume it was the same with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did you first get really into get excited for Final Fantasy VII? What made you want to get Final Fantasy VII at that time?
You know what? I can't remember. I can't pinpoint the exact moment, but I just remember. I'll never forget it. Actually, I remember seeing it. I knew about the game before this, but I remember seeing an issue of CVG in a magazine rack in I think it was like in the spa down the road from my grandparents' house, and it was a cover. It was a metallic silver cover, and it was silver background, and it had Cloud on the front, on the Hardy Daytona, the bike, and it had the caption. I remember it really vividly. I can't remember what the caption was exactly, but it was something like, something kick-ass or something under that tone. I was just like, oh my God, that looks like the best thing ever. But I was already aware of the game, and I can't remember exactly the moment, but I obsessed over it. Every time I saw it in a magazine, I would buy that magazine. I would cut out the pictures. I would make little collages, just using Pritt stick and just sticking it down on bits of paper and whatnot. I remember in school we did. I can't remember what year it is because we had different year structures in my school. I think it was what we called first forms, which I think is year 7 or 8. And we were told to we were going to make time capsules, and they were like, okay, put whatever's in there that's important to you. And I just made collages of Final Fantasy VII, screenshots, artwork, all that kind of stuff. I just stuck it on a bit of paper and put it in there. Unfortunately, we never knew where they were put, so we never got them again. We never saw them again after they were buried somewhere, probably thrown away in a clear out or something. But I do very vividly remember making that. And yeah, this was a game that I absolutely obsessed over. Every detail I could ever find. In fact, this is before the internet. So, a quarter page in whatever magazine, I would buy that magazine. I would pore over that little tiny bit in a magazine and just, be completely absorbed by it. And the funny thing is that, as it turns out, when I finally got to play the game, I actually didn't really understand anything about the game at all. Because in the first battle, when you get off the train and you fight the Shinra soldiers, I remember just thinking, oh my God, look at this is amazing. Your ATB fills up, you click attack, and I was like, oh my God, let's go. And then you see Cloud, he goes up, he takes one swipe at a soldier and jumps back, and the ATB fills up, and I was like, what just happened? I'm like, what? Why is he back where he starts? Okay, filled up. Maybe I did something wrong. Do it again. Same thing happens. I'm like, this isn't what I thought the game was like. Oh well, whatever. And I was just like, I don't care. Let's keep going. This looks so good. And then, the more I played, obviously, that's when I realized how much lore, story, characters, and all that kind of stuff. And that's when it all grabbed me, when it hooked me, when I played it. But before, I think I just really loved it because it looked so cool. It just looks so different to anything I had ever seen. And yeah, that was how I guess my obsession started.
Well, in terms of making collages, that's definitely a bona fide obsession as far as obsessions go.
I was a kid, okay? I was like 6, 7 years old. Actually, no, I wasn't. That's a lie. When the game came out, I think I was 10 or 11, so I was probably about 9 or 10.
Well,
so still a kid. I was a kid.
Okay, you have leeway. Not much, but leeway nonetheless.
I had nothing better to do.
Who doesn't when playing games? So you've booted up the game, and intro's there, and then intro was starting, like, you're floating out what seems like space, and then big explosion there.
The bombing mission, yep, funny run.
What was that like then? Like, when you first start seeing the intro, like, what was that like for you? Oh
man, completely mind blowing. It's like, this is just kind of a funny thing because Final Fantasy VII was, as we've already mentioned, it's like most people's first Final Fantasy game, yeah? And it's a game that whenever you ask people, like, what's your favorite PlayStation game, whatever, that's a game that Final Fantasy VII always comes up. More so than any other Final Fantasy game, I'd say. And it gets you thinking, like, what is it really about Final Fantasy VII that makes it so special? Because, obviously every Final Fantasy game is different. And, arguably 7 has been bested, whatever. That's another topic. But But 7 is the one that people always remember, and it's always the one that the majority of people go back to. And I think what it really was, it was, especially for me at the time, it really epitomizes PlayStation. It epitomizes what the PlayStation was really capable of and what it actually meant. It's like, not just as a system, but, what video games as well were and could be. Because before that, you've got, I know other RPGs have existed before that, and especially because this was the first, but the way the tech worked and the way, the full motion videos flowed from gameplay to FMVs seamlessly, all that kind of stuff really kind of just showed you that, man, this is PlayStation, this is power, this is what you can do in games now, if you know what I mean. This is it's all in 3D, it looks incredible, it's unlike anything you've ever seen. It's not just like level by level structures, everything flows, and it's just like, it's a statement. It was at the time more of a statement of, this is the new standard, this is what video games are. And I guess other games do that as well. You mentioned Metal Gear Solid before. Like Metal Gear Solid 1 is another game that did that, with its very cinematic presentation. Is like, I don't want to diss any other kind of games, but when you think of let's say like a platform game like Mario or Sonic, you think bright cartoony graphics, level structure, video gamey, which is perfectly fine. It's great for what they are, but it's like these games were like, this is the new standard. This is PlayStation. It's like, that is why 7 sticks in so many people's minds so much, because it's so mind blowing and so perfect for the time. It was the first that it'll never happen again, I don't think, because as technology advances, it's harder and harder to do that, because it's you've almost had that experience before. You've seen that kind of thing before. That technological leap is has diminishing returns. The kind of leaps have diminishing returns, and I was like, I just could not believe what I was seeing. I almost couldn't believe it was even a game that I was playing, especially because I didn't really know what I was doing either.
You said yourself, like, the lore was one of the big reasons why you were interested in that game. Like, talk of that lore, like how much that resonated with you.
Oh, mate. You know what? As the older you get, and the more you look into it, the more you hear other people talking about it, and the more you talk about it. 7 often gets a bit of a bad rep for being, I guess like with most Japanese games, having convoluted stories and whatnot. But when I first played it, everything just made sense. Everything flowed. And it was like, because it was the first game I ever played that really had a story, I'm trying, because, again, I keep saying I played the Legend of Zelda games, but which also have stories, but how those stories in Zelda games aren't, I don't want to say fully fleshed out narratives, because they are, but you know what I mean? It's like, you go here, you go to a dungeon, you get this item, you go here, stuff happens. There's less kind of dialogue and like kind of interaction, whereas Final Fantasy VII was the first time I had ever seen anything like that. It's like, these are actual characters, these are actual people talking and going through struggles, and maybe now when you look back, it's some lines of dialogue are a bit hokey, but because it was made in the 90s, but at the time, and actually no, I still think it holds up even to this day. I'm playing it on my phone on iOS, which, oh my god, there's another thing. Like, I can't believe, like, maybe I'm just easily amused, or easily impressed, but I can't believe I'm playing Final Fantasy VII on the go on a tiny little device in the palm of my hand. It's like, it blows my mind. If I told myself, the kid playing the game, it's like, no, I would have slapped myself. Like, that would never happen. That's stupid. How could that game ever fit onto? Anyway, tangent. The whole story and the lore just almost overwhelmed me, because it kept. I don't want to say it kept me up all night, but it made me want to stay up later at night to play and to spend more time with these characters, to get up earlier just to play it. I would rush my homework so I could get a little bit more time in, just to see what would happen next, how all these people would talk to each other and interact with each other. And it was, like I said, because it was the first time that I'd ever seen it. I think that has a big impact on the game's impact on me. But at the same time, it was a case of at the time when 7 came out, it came out just a couple of years after my dad passed away. So my mum was, and my brother's older than me, so he was, I think he was, how old was he? He was, obviously more busy studying than I was. I think he was coming towards the end of his GCSEs. So I was left more so on my own, because my mum was always working. I was left to my own devices more so than when I was a kid. So these characters, these people in this game felt even more real to me, because, I wouldn't say they were my friends, because, it's all part of a story. I wasn't necessarily, I'm not there.
No,
but I felt like I was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like I was even more invested in everything, in the lore and the story and everything going on. And it all made sense to me. It's only when I got older, then maybe I got smarter and I could see things maybe not making as much sense or not. And it's actually a lot of the jokes went over my head as a kid. I didn't quite realize how sassy and sarcastic Cloud really is until I was replaying the game when I was older, which I love about him, and I can't believe I missed it the first time around. But yeah, that is what the lore and the characters mean to me, because without sounding over dramatic, I didn't really have anyone else in my life at that point.
That's the beauty part about revisiting games later down the line, and I've had this with myself with Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3. Like, you spot things that you didn't see the first time. Like I can't speak for Final Fantasy a great deal, because I never played the big AAA big blockbusters on PS1, like Final Fantasy, like Metal Gear Solid, like whatever else came out at that time. But I can speak for my younger childhood and realizing things now, because in 2002, spoilers by the way for anyone listening, there's the big Cell, Raiden's there, sneaking up, and he's on the helipad. Olga's there,
slipping on bird shit.
Slipping on bird shit, yep. And there's Olga on the staircase to the helipad, warning some guy over the radio about Tengu ninjas, and then this ominous music comes on, and she escapes by doing some sort of ninja moves. And then it turns out that, hindsight being 20, 14 years later, of course, Olga was the ninja in the game. The music would have foreshadowed her being the ninja before the big reveal. The guy in the radio was Solidus, and the Tengu soldiers were to guard Arsenal gear. So it's my point is it's although you don't really notice these things for first time, it's still nice. Even I don't quite know how to word this, but it's more of a good feeling they have when you discover these things hook up even years down the line. It's a good feeling to have. It's a warm feeling to have, even perhaps.
Yeah, and I guess it shows that the games have layers, right?
Yeah.
It means that whatever emotional investment you had in a game almost feels justified, because you go back to it and you're like, oh, it's not just a 2D, not literally 2D, like two-dimensional kind of, how to put it, emotions. I'm not looking into it too much. You know what I mean? I'm not looking at things that aren't really there. It's a game, music, whatever, that has those layers that allows you to look into things more so than you probably would have realized.
We've touched upon on the lore, and we'll get more specific with characters in a minute. But what about as a setting as a whole, Midgar, that kind of big vibrant world, exploring that for the first time?
Oh man, it's like how to, man, I just get completely thinking back. I just get so awestruck about how much is in that game and how much happens. I mean, I remember being really surprised that when you even left Midgar, I was like, there's more of the game outside? Because, you did show some of the other bits of the world, in the marketing and stuff, but most of it was all kind of focused with the events that happened inside Midgar, especially because Midgar is such a iconic location within the game. But it was, it's every bit of music in that game, in Final Fantasy VII. I can always, as soon as it plays, I can picture myself exactly where I was or where you are in the game when that plays. And the bits in Midgar, especially in Shinra Tower, it's, it brings back, and it's just so atmospheric, and it's so, because the way Midgar is, I suppose being, kind of pseudo-realistic, pseudo-futuristic, pseudo-sci-fi, all that kind of stuff, it's sort of believable that it's a place that could exist at some point in time.
Yeah.
It's not like a medieval castle with dragons and magic.
Yeah, the typical RPG tropes.
Exactly, that's very fantastical. That you think, this is pure fantasy. Whereas, although Final Fantasy VII does have stuff like magic and all that kind of stuff, and all the stuff with Jennifer and all that, blah 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 blah. The setting is a lot more realistic, especially a lot more realistic than anything I had played at the time. Because I'm trying to think, like the closest thing that I can even remember being realistic that I at least got into is stuff like like Flashback on the Mega Drive, or maybe even I don't know. With Cypher Filter was after Metal Gear Solid, so that wasn't even then. I'm trying to think of what other realistic game I can't even remember, apart from maybe some World War II shooters like Medal of Honor. But then of course that's World War II, so it's not the present. So Final Fantasy VII in Midgar, it felt real, but obviously there were bits in it that were obviously very fantastical. They weren't real, so it was like a good mixture of places, things that you could that allowed you to really believe in the place.
Like you said, it's a more realistic, more grounded, more modern setting. Like certainly compared to past games where it is this kind of where they fit in with that kind of magical kind of I don't quite know how to put it, but like basically it fits in with the tropes of the classic RPG era of like looking at somewhere like Eastern Europe. Although that is basically Final Fantasy IX as well, like because that's been influenced by Eastern Europe as well, like Czech Republic and all that there. But I digress. And it's a more industrial like setting as well, like certainly a lot more industrial than any other game at that time. So it was definitely a setting that, and I say that as someone who's not played a great deal of Final Fantasy VII, even though there's plenty of options now to do so, but it's more, there wasn't really a setting like it. It's certainly nothing iconic on that level anyways since then.
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, I would agree with that. And the other thing as well, especially like at the time and the age I was, Midgar was fucking cool, man. You look at around and looking at the artwork and stuff, that place is cool. And and the things that you're doing there, like I didn't even realize kind of the gravity, the fact that you're terrorists in the beginning of the game. I just thought, I maybe more innocently thought of eco warriors or whatever. But the things that happen and things that you do, the pacing at the beginning from the bombing mission onwards, it's just constantly you're doing cool stuff. Cool stuff is happening. You get chased down the street, you jump on the top of the train. You get busted, you have to jump out, all that kind of stuff. It's never a dull moment. And the whole setting is totally believable within the cool shit that you do and the cool shit that you see.
Just to touch upon the other not smaller place, but like the other locations within the game, like the other main secondary locations, certainly, like there's Costa del Sol, there's Gongaga, and of course, perhaps the bigger, most well-known, like kind of location within that location is the Golden Saucer.
Yep.
Just talk of your experience.
Oh, mate, I wish the Golden Saucer was real. That's all I remember as a kid. Like, oh my god, I want to go there. I want to be in this. So it just looks so amazing. Yeah, and there's the other, because all the locations are so distinct. They're so special in their own right. And actually, you mentioned Costa del Sol. That one's probably the most weirdest out of all of them. I mean, it's just a beach resort, but especially after you just leave Junon, you fight Jennifer for the first time, and then you're just chilling out on the beach. It's like, this is surreal. And I know it's a pacing thing, to let you decompress and think about what's just happened. But at the same time, it's like, this is really weird. But I love it because it mixes that weirdness with the serious, with the funny, with the goofy, and the dramatic. And then you've got places like Cosmo Canyon, which I think automatically jumps incredibly high on most people's list in Final Fantasy locations because of the music. Because the Cosmo Canyon music is boss. And I think comes up in everybody's top list of favorite tracks from Final Fantasy VII from the soundtrack. And yeah, every place in that game is special, and I guess maybe that's just a test. Maybe I'm looking at the game through bias eyes because I love it so much, but I think it's also what really helped, elevate the game to its status because, with Midgar being Midgar, if everything else, if all the other locations outside where you spend, I guess, the majority of the game, if it was a bit shit, then, you probably pack it in. You probably wouldn't be interested, but they have enough character in their own right. Everything from the rocket teetering over in Rocket Town and everybody talking like, yeah, we know it's going to fall one day, but we still hang around. Every place has a story. Every place has its own history and background that, you want to find out about. And I guess that's the hallmark of a good JRPG or RPG in general, I guess.
So let's move on and touch upon character side, anyways. So I'm going to name a few characters, and then you just basically sum up how much they resonate with you. So let's start with really simple one, Cloud.
Oh man, Cloud! I love Cloud. I think, especially after Advent Children, he gets a bit of a bad rep for being a bit, I guess it was at that time as well, where everyone says, oh, he's just an emo wannabe, crack a smile, crack a joke. But then, like I said earlier on, it's like, especially in the beginning of the game, he is such a sarcastic, wise-cracking motherfucker. He's badass. And he's like, he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't take shit. And he's, I love him. And the thing is, he's a lot more, I think he's got a lot more layers than a lot of people kind of give him credit for. Because, there's spoilers. If anyone's not played Final Fantasy VII, shame on you. But, when you find out that he's, a clone, and you find out his history, when he loses his mind, and all the things with Jennifer cells and that stuff, it's like, it feels, for me at least, it felt like I lost a part of myself as well. Because when I grew older and when I started replaying the game, and a theme that I never even realized in the game jumped out at me, and that's a theme that you can't trust your memories, you can't trust what people say, you can't trust anybody. It's a trust, I suppose, is big theme, and Cloud is the epitome of that because he goes through the entire game thinking he's Cloud Strife and thinking like, this is my life, this is what happened. You find out that it's all a lie. And yet he has the strength to stand up and like, actually, you know what? Fuck that. I am my own person. I'm going to go kick Sephiroth's ass and save the world, or blah, blah, blah. You know that? So he's got, an inner strength like that any good JRPG hero needs to have because, hero's journey and all that kind of stuff. And I've got a lot of love for Cloud. I love everything from his design. I love it's all its costumes, from the game to Advent Children, Buster Sword is fucking badass, even if it is giant and impractical. But you see him swing it around in Advent Children, it's like, yeah, all right, you make it work. Never thought I would ever see a giant ass piece of metal like that work, but man, you can do it. You can do it.
Next, Tifa.
Best character in Final Fantasy history. I love Tifa. She is the heart and soul of Final Fantasy VII. Cloud is obviously Cloud and Sephiroth are like kind of the main characters. The story revolves around them and their relationship. But really, the crutch of the entire game, the heart of the game, lies in Tifa and her relationship with Cloud. Her desire to protect him and her desire, her maternity feelings, I suppose, Yeah. You could see it like in the party, in the group, she's always kind of like the mother figure. She is the one that, hides the truth from Cloud because she knows, can you imagine that? When your best friend and the person that you're in love with is spouting all this stuff that is not true, and that you must know in your heart that person is not who you think they are. That's deep. That's deep as in like cut deep. And and she's got that inner strength to stand up and be like, no, you know what? I'm going to go on this journey to protect you because I know that this is wrong. Because if you think about it, granted, after the plate falls and everyone leaves Midgar, she's got nowhere else to go because her home's been destroyed and whatnot. But she has no real reason to go along with them, with Barrett and Cloud. So and Red 13. So, but she goes because of her love for Cloud and the fact, that she knows that she has to be there. And obviously, wants to help out Barrett as well because they obviously have, a friendship and go way back as well. But yeah, the whole crutch of the story is how the bit when Cloud and Tifa fall into the live stream and she helps him piece himself back together. That is the most important part of the story, to me anyway, in Final Fantasy VII. She is instrumental in that. She's instrumental in putting everything together.
It's safe to say that in terms of the love triangle, you went with Tifa.
Yes. I did. Although I always try. I mean, I've played it so many times. I've gone with every option. Tifa is the one I always go for. I mean, that's a tough one because Aerith as well is such a great character, and the way the dynamic works between her and Cloud is just as sweet as Tifa and Cloud. Because Tifa, because of her, her, I guess what she knows and like her motherly figure and that kind of stuff, she's too reserved. Whereas Aerith has that kind of go-get-em attitude, and it's just like, it's tough. It's a tough one, but I push comes to shove, Tifa. I would choose Tifa. If I was Cloud, I'd choose Tifa.
Barrett.
You know what? Barrett to me is the comic relief. I love Barrett because he's Barrett and Sid. I love because I just laugh. They just make me laugh. Especially when Barrett just gets angry and he like stuff he doesn't understand, and especially because the game didn't have any voice acting, and when he swears, just cracks me up. I can't really put it. I never used him. I'm going to be honest. He was never in my main party. Nothing against him. I'm not even sure why. I guess I just chose other characters. Even though he's actually one of the best. If you're going to go max stats, he's one of the best characters to go with because he's got multi-hit limit breaks. Anyway, I never really... Barrett was just kind of... He was more of an enabler. And I feel bad for him because, he goes off forming Avalanche. You're not forming Avalanche, being part of Avalanche and, trying to save the world. And he kind of has a realization that he's not the guy to do it, and that's why he passes the mantle over to Cloud and makes Cloud the leader. It's like he realizes that he's probably not smart enough to do it, but also he's just not able to. And in a way, that's kind of heartbreaking. It's a slight kind of nuance to his character that he's just quietly sidesteps, but at the same time, it's like he wants to be tough, he wants to be strong, especially because of Marlene. He wants to protect her and he wants to make sure the world is safe and a better place for her. And after, you have your confrontation with her father dying and, he dies, he has the same kind of level of guilt, I suppose, a similar sort of guilt thing that Cloud gets later on, for letting Aerith die. He had a similar thing with dying, but obviously because Marlene's still alive and he still had a purpose, he's a lot kind of internalizes it a lot more, but you can always see the nuances that kind of peek through of his desire to be the hero, but he knows that he can't be.
Next up, Yuffie.
Oh man, cheeky little scamp. I'll never forgive her for stealing all my materia. What a bitch. That bit, I just got through that playing on iOS, and that bit is actually surprisingly more difficult than I remember, and I was like, oh man, if I had my materia, this would be so easy. This boss battle wouldn't be so difficult. Like, you are such a... But then again, I really like her, so like I use her all the time. I'm like, oh, god damn it. You're like the only... Because I don't like using Vincent, because I don't really like his limit breaks. So it's like, you're my only long-range character, but yet you stole my materia. I shake my fist at you every time you turn around. But again, that's all part of her charm, is that she's so materia obsessed and she's so cheeky. And then it's weird because, obviously she's a character that you could go the entire game and completely miss because you've got to go and recruit her. Same with Vincent. In fact, I think the first time I ever played the game, I got it completely by chance, and I got it way, way, way after I was supposed to.
Oh.
I say supposed to, it obviously varies depending on when you can recruit her. Because this was before the internet and all that stuff. I had no idea she was even in there. I just kind of stumbled into it. And so after that, I made the playthroughs I played after. I kind of made a point to get her early into user, but at the same time, because she's quote unquote expendable to the story because they've obviously written it in a way that she's not always there. She has a lot kind of more of a how to describe it, like kind of a throwaway personality in the sense that she can be there or she can't be, but at the same time her comments can be quite flippant because she's not always counted on him being there. So she can be really funny and she can be really cheeky, and I personality wise I love her because she's the most light-hearted out of the group.
Aries, and I'll attach to that with like your personal feeling to that scene. Let's say
Spoilers.
Aries dies.
No, you know what? When I first played the game, I remember very, very distinctly when that happened, when she died. It was the end of disc 1. When I booted up disc 2, I was like, it's all right. A further bit down the line in the game, she'll come back. Something will happen. And then, I played the game, and it just kind of hit me. It's like, she's not coming back, is she?
She's not coming back.
And it's like, I'm not even sure how I felt. I think I kind of, because I've always had a very kind of analytical mind, and I always think, oh, it's a game. This is part of like the mechanics, blah, 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 blah. That's the way it's kind of made and it's built. But at the same time, it's like, I didn't feel sad. I felt a little bit angry. I was like, oh, fuck, all that time using her leveling up. What a waste. Fuck. That was my first thought when I realized she wasn't coming back. It was only until I was older that the emotional rhythm started to really take hold. Maybe as a kid, I guess maybe you just don't understand death. And it was a little afterwards, actually. I felt, okay, I'm going to get a bit real now. I felt a lot of guilt because I remember when my dad passed away, I felt quite similar. I don't think at that age I understood how to process death, and I didn't understand what it really meant. I mean, obviously I knew what it meant, but I didn't know what it meant after it happened, if you know what I mean. And I don't mean like afterlife and that kind of stuff. I mean like how do you live when something like that happens? Like when my dad passed away, I remember being upset, but I just went back to school, and I just carried on my life. And I just carried on. And maybe because I didn't know what else to do, and I didn't know how to feel. And as I grew up, when I older I got, I felt really guilty about it because I was like, I feel that I should have been more upset. I should have shown more emotion, if you will. And I get a little bit of that when Aerith dies, because when I first played the game, I just carried on with the game. Half of me thought, it's a game, she'll come back. But after I realized she wasn't coming back, I was like, oh, I guess I'll just carry on then. Fucking Sephiroth, what a dick. And the older I got, the more I replayed it when I was older, the more the guilt racked up in me. And I guess I felt more and more emotional towards it because I remember as a kid just playing on. And I was like, and then now, when, like actually I haven't even got to that scene yet, but the last time I replayed it, there's it's like you said with, in Metal Gear Solid 2, that bit with the layers. No. I have a similar moment. I had an epiphany moment with that in the death, with the music playing, with the little nods and the things happening, with Holy falling down the steps in time with the music, and the fact that when you're fighting Jennifer Life and it's Aerith theme playing, it's like that's haunting. I never quite got it. It never quite hit me, when I was younger. But having that sweet music playing while you're having this massive boss fight, and it's like, and especially because you just get Neo Bahamut at that point, so you get that awesome summon where Jennifer gets taken up in the sky and gets shot down by this massive beam from Neo Bahamut, and you're like, with her theme playing in the background, it's a real tearjerker.
It is like I can save like I can it's I know what you're going for, I know what you mean, Dan, because I know this experience firsthand from a year ago with my own mum, who died nearly a year ago, and I really, it's kind of hard to put into words, and quite frankly I'm somewhat reluctant to put it into words, but
don't feel like you have to.
No.
It's tough.
But it feels like I did something similar, because like I basically moved on, like, well, not so much move on, but like try to get back to as normal life as fast as you can, and like and I can honestly say games helped with that, and like Metal Gear Solid 3, Grand Theft Auto 5, and I know I'm talking about like games that, perhaps with the exception of Metal Gear Solid 3, not really special, but like I can definitely see what you mean, and the underlying point to that is that with games, they provide that kind of healing power, so to speak. Even if I'm trying to put this into words. I'm trying, but they provide such a healing power even after so long after the event, that it's just magical. So I don't know how else to put it in words, but I know what you mean, anyways.
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say. It is one of the things that's really inexplainable. It doesn't quite take you back to the moment, but it reminds you of elements of that, and the thing is, it's like moments like that, or even different kind of moments in your life that they can be happy or sad, that have a profound effect on you. Obviously, ours aren't exactly happy moments, but they can be. But when you just get vague glimpses of memories of them, it puts things into perspective, and it reminds you of things, happier things to do with that you like. In your mind you'll be like, oh, at the time, I say, personally, I felt that kind of that level of guilt, but then I'll remember that guilt is caused because I love my dad, and that kind of thing, So it's I know what you mean. It's like really difficult to put into words.
Let's try to cheer ourselves up by talking about how much of a dick Sephiroth is.
Oh, mate, you know what? This is the best thing about Sephiroth, and one of the best things that Final Fantasy VII ever did, or it's the fact that they don't even show you Sephiroth until I think maybe 8 hours into the game. They talk about him, but you don't ever see him. Like when you get into Shinra Tower and they talk about him, and there's blood all over the walls when you escape, and then you find his sword stabbed through the president, and he's like, what the fuck, who is this guy? And you go across over the marshes on your Chocobo for the first time, you see Midgar Zolom, the giant snake, spear, and you're like, holy shit, how the fuck does any guy can do this? And you're like, we're gonna go fight this guy? You fucking nuts? He's gonna murder us. And I think, and you have, obviously what he looks like because he's in like promotional art and whatnot, but you've not seen him in the game. You don't know what he's actually done. The first time you see him actually is in a flashback of when Cloud goes back to Nibelheim as first time as a soldier, and at that point he's not evil. That's when he turns evil, or sorry, he turns insane, and then that's it. The first time you see him is descent into madness, and all you know about him before that is that he can fuck shit up like real bad, and he is a badass motherfucker. And he gets a bad rep being mummy's boy and all that kind of stuff, but you know what I mean? It's like that. But it's within the context of the story, within the context of the game, within the context of his own insanity. It does make sense, and it gives him an overwhelming sense of presence. And especially, and after Aerith's death, that's it. That cemented him as like, that is why he's so fondly remembered as a villain, because he is just built up so much and he delivers on his just, his wanted destruction and all that stuff, and he's just such a dick. It's one of the best villains.
What an asshole, basically.
Yeah, what a butthole. That's the thing, because because a lot of people, like old school Final Fantasy fans in particular, they'll always shout, "Oh, Kefka's the best Final Fantasy villain." But you know what, my biggest problem with Kefka, I mean, he's great, because the best and worst thing about him is that he is clearly insane and he just does whatever he wants, and he just killed everyone and just murdered everyone and just does whatever the fuck without consideration. He just does it because he is pure evil, which makes him really unpredictable, makes him insane. But at the same time, I feel that can almost make him a little bit two-dimensional, because there's no depth to that. He's just mental. Whereas Sephiroth has elements of being mental, more kind of, I guess, megalomaniac, kind of psychopathic, rather than, clearly insane like Kefka. But Sephiroth has that extra level of depth and that build-up, whereas Kefka just turns up and just destroyed everything, which, does make him a fantastic villain. But, yeah, how Sephiroth can, I think, go toe-to-toe on that. In its villainous-esque.
Villainous-esque type sort of fun.
Yeah.
Like, we touched upon it slightly there, but, like, the soundtrack is, like, iconic. Like, obviously, the theme itself, obviously, but, like, and other bits, like, Aerith's theme and One Winged Angel, but, like, what stands out for you in terms of the score, anyways?
Tifa's theme. Tifa's theme is the best theme in all of Final Fantasy. Putting it out there. And I'm not just saying that just because she's my favourite character. Well, I suppose it's actually tied to that, because it has, in the same way that Tifa is the heart and soul of Final Fantasy VII and the crutch of the story, her theme epitomizes her character and is also, embellishes that her as a heart and soul. It's calm, it's soothing, it's warm, but yet, and it's got that kind of, I don't want to say emptiness, but that longing kind of feeling, because obviously she has those longing kind of feelings for Cloud and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, there's so much depth in that. And I know a lot of people will say, One Winged Angel, because it's Sephiroth theme, Aerith theme, Cloud theme, all that kind of stuff. And they're all fantastic pieces of music. Really, really top notch. I mean, whenever they play any of those at Distant Worlds or any other Final Fantasy concert, I get goosebumps. Like, it's incredible music. And Cosmo Canyon, such a good theme. I would just sit there by the campfire in Cosmo Canyon and just listen to that. But yeah, I think for me, I mean, I'm a bit of a sucker for the slower pieces in general, in like kind of the Final Fantasy scores at the franchise. But yeah, Tifa theme for me is the one.
Just to slightly move away from the actual main game, there was of course the compilation of 7. And obviously the two big bits that stand out, certainly for me anyways, is Advent Children and Crisis Core, which up until recently is the most I've actually played a Final Fantasy game. Because Crisis Core is such a good fucking game. It really is.
I'm gonna have to ruin all my credentials now and admit that I have not played Crisis Core.
Dear Square Enix, please fire this man immediately.
I never owned a PSP, so I never had the opportunity to play it. But it's on my list. It's on my bucket list. I will get around to it because I know. Yeah, I've heard so much of it. It's a game I have to play. Especially being a Final Fantasy VII fan.
Do you not have a Vita? Like, you can play on that?
It's not on PSN.
Oh, fuck, that's right. It's not on PSN, that's right. Oops.
Sorry. I know, I'm gutted as well. But yeah, otherwise I would have been on that like a fly on shit.
What about Advent Children, and to have a sidebar on that, because obviously that takes place in the aftermath of 7.
Yeah, Advent Children's... Oh man, Advent Children was great. is great, I should say. I know it gets a lot of flack for, dragging out the story. And, the ending of 7 was great, that it was very ambiguous. Or the last bit you see was Red 13, well, what you think is Red 13 and his family, his offspring, with Midgar in ruins. So, there's that bit that it kind of ruins that, I say ruins, goes that what happens after that. But at the same time, as a Final Fantasy fan, I love it. I love it. I mean, it's just to see the characters again, to see the aftermath was, oh man, and especially at the time with those visuals, blew my mind. Even to this day, it still looks good. I mean, it's built on what is it, at least 10-year-old tech.
Like,
probably even longer than that. No, wait, it's the 20th anniversary of the game, right?
Yeah.
So,
no, it was
coming up.
20th anniversary, coming up, yeah.
So that means maybe even longer. So maybe even like 10 to 15. Let's say 10 to 15 years. Yeah. I'll be bothered to work it out right now. But yeah, that's pretty old tech, and it still holds up. So I guess that's how good the VisualWorks team at Square Enix are making CG.
Like, to be fair, like the best CG work I've seen, it comes from Square Enix. But not for Final Fantasy VII or Advance Children or whatever. It's actually one of the trailers for what became Final Fantasy 15, but back when it was known as Versus 13. Like, this was 4 odd years ago. Like, the opening bit of CG for that.
I know the one you're talking about. I know it.
It's just incredible. Like, I was stunned.
Yeah, man. Even now, every little thing they do is so immaculate, and it's like, pushes the boundaries. I mean, like everything from the Deus Ex Mankind Divided announcement trailer that they did, like, blew my mind. That the secret movie in Final Fantasy Type 0 HD. Oh man, just the level of detail and the rent. Oh man, yeah, best at CG.
Indeed. What else do you like about Final Fantasy VII that we've not touched upon tonight?
Oh jeez. You know what? I think the materia system is one of the most underrated systems in RPGs. It's because if you think about it, if you look at each character statistic-wise, there is variation between them, but they can be made quite, across the board, very similar. So the only difference really between the characters are their weapons and their limit breaks. With the materia system, it's almost, I would say, it is one of the best, if not the best, create your own class system, because the materia gives you so much variety in how you put things together. If you want, to go pure black mage, easy, just load a character with all green materia, whatever spells you want. If you want them to be, any other class, classic Final Fantasy class, you can make it yourself. And if you want to blend classes, you can do that with the materia. Or even if you want to go full on just melee, just have, boost up all your other kind of stats and whatnot. There's so much flexibility in the system that I think not enough people give it enough credit, not enough people big it up, because I think it's incredible. A lot of people say, 5 has a great class system, which it does, but to me, 7 is a really, really cleverly put together game, as well as, like, of course, the story and all that kind of stuff. The other thing is that people just seem to forget, but just don't really talk about.
This may be a hard question to answer in light of that. Like, what didn't you like?
Ooh, yeah, that is a tough. I'm trying to think. There must be something. Because no game is ever perfect. I think some of the plot points don't work quite as well. Some of the overall plot things can be a bit kind of head scratching, kind of what, mate? What? There are some bits, especially like when the reunions with all the clones and all that kind of thing, can you be like a bit hokey, a bit too out there. I mean, I maybe I'm biased and I can just allow myself to just get lost in all that kind of stuff. But I can understand people be like, no, the story sucks, mate. That doesn't make any sense. That's a bit shit. That writing here was rubbish. And I can understand people coming from that angle, but I personally don't necessarily see it as much. I'm genuinely struggling to think of what. I can't even ask you because you haven't even played it.
Well, I've played in bits, but not entirely. Like, I would say maybe 2 hours, 3 hours at best.
Oh, mate, come on, sort your life out.
Hey, that's why the remake's happening.
Oh, okay, all right, I'll let you off then. But what would you say? Would you have anything that you say that you would criticize the game?
I think if there was anything to criticize on my end, it's that, and this is more my fault than the game's really, but I'll put it out there anyways. But and this is the same problem I had with playing the original Metal Gear Solid for the first time. It's that I didn't really play it at the time it came out, at the time of its, let's say, fame, because I think, and this is the opinion I hold of Metal Gear Solid as well. Like, if I had played these games at their time rather than, say, 10, 11 years later, then I would hold a different opinion of it now than I would, playing it for the first time 5 or 6 years ago, like I did with Metal Gear Solid 1, like I did with Final Fantasy VII for the first time 5 years ago, because I think it was 2010 I first played it actually on PS3 when it came out as a PS1 classic. So I think that's the only criticism that I have for the game. But again, that's me, not the game, and that's thankfully why, like I say that kind of flippantly because of the point made, but in a kind of serious way as well. That's why I'm kind of thankful the remake has happened, because it brings the game to a whole new generation, like nearly 20 years on.
Actually, yeah, that's a good point. It's easy to forget that, the people who played, people like me, who played Final Fantasy VII when it first came out, we were kids. Well, I tell you, or young adults, whatever. When that originally came out, and it's like, there are so many gamers now who've grown up and only heard about this game, and they'll look at me like, it's an old retro game. Look at that, I'm not going to play that shit. Because, it just couldn't actually the way it looked, because it was made in 1997. And it's, easy to forget. So, I hope you play and enjoy.
I'll try and get into the PS1 version again. In fact, and I'll try and on PS3. And actually, there's the PS4 PC port coming as well. So I nearly forgot about that. So I'll try and get on that for the end of the year. I'm going to ask you a tough question. Top 3 Final Fantasy games. Obviously 7 at the top, but like, how would you fill that top 3 out?
Oh, that's the easy question. 7, 10, 8.
Oh, okay. Like, well, give a brief rundown as to why, like why they would be in your top 3.
7.
Well, 7
was we've already covered it. My first one. It's the one that changed everything for me. 10 was a very similar kind of story, because obviously the first one on PS2, the same kind of had that technological leap. And it was the first time that Final Fantasy went into a story that was about 2 characters, really. It's a story about Tidus. Yes, Tidus, not Tidus. Tidus and Yuna, and it's their relationship and their story. That is what Final Fantasy X is all about. And no other Final Fantasy before that has really done that. It was always an ensemble cast, right? And each cast member always had like their own kind of story. I mean, 7, you could argue, how it was about Cloud and Sephiroth, but Aerith, Tifa, Barret, or everyone else still had a big part in that. Whereas everyone in 10, it's like the whole fact that all the characters travel in a group. They're all going on a pilgrimage. That's the kind of the theme of the story, that it's about following one person's journey. And because of that, it was a lot more personable, I suppose. A lot of the kind of things that happen have a lot more kind of emotional weight, because you're following this one person or 2 people's story so closely. And it's just incredible. It's got probably my favorite ending, because it's so bittersweet. And I could probably gush about Final Fantasy X as much as I have about 7, so I'm not going to go on much longer. So 8, I just, I'm trying to think how to put it into words why I love 8 so much. But I think I remember playing 8 following 7, Christmas after it came, Cadet came out on the Christmas. I remember playing it Christmas morning, and I remember playing it and thinking, "This is different. It's not the same." And I'm like, "What is this I'm playing?" And I stuck with it, and I was like, "It's just struck such a chord with me." I think the fact that it went down that more realistic route, with obviously the realistic characters, the way they dress, and the world, and certain things, was obviously deliberately more realistic kind of setting, and the whole love story, being between Score and Renoa being the main theme of 8. I think in the same way that 10, was a story about Yuno and her story, it's like their story and the general theme of love, I think I'm really struggling to put into words. I can't actually think why.
Just lost.
Yeah, I am actually at a loss for words. It's
blimey.
I'm for a long time actually. 8 and 10 used to swap around in my favourites between the second and third slot. To be fair, I've not played 8 in quite a long time. I should go out and replay it. But yeah, I can't pinpoint an exact reason why I love it so much. The story itself, I mean, everything I say is just the same thing that I would say about the Final Fantasy franchise. It's like, I love the characters, I love the stories, the music, but there was a special something in 8, but I just can't quite put my finger on it. Because 6 is the one that follows after. I could list you all the mainline games in order, from my favourite to least favourite. And 6 is the one that comes after 8 for me, and 6 works because I love it's basically like a bunch of individual stories stuck together with every character has their own line, like their own storyline, and the music. Oh man, the music. 6 has the best character themes, and it really kind of helps bring that to life. Whereas I think 8 just it's got the emotional weight in it that I just can't put into words. It's really frustrating. It's really bugging me.
Honorable mentions. Go for it.
It's got to be
Persona 4.
Persona 4 and The Wind Waker.
Yeah.
They are my top 3 favorite games of all time. As I've mentioned throughout the rest of this podcast, I love the Legend of Zelda franchise, and The Wind Waker is easily my favorite out of all the Legend of Zelda games. It's the most expressive, the most emotional, and it's so charming. And it's got really strong. It's got stories, strong characters that instantly I fell in love with it. I remember at the time, people were bitching about it like crazy. For the cell shaded graphics, which is funny because nowadays, it's complete U-turn and everyone loves it. But at the time, oh man, that was nasty. But even when I first laid eyes on it, I was like, this is incredible. This is absolutely stunning. And yeah, it's just such a clever game as well. So Wind Waker up there, and Persona 4.
It's worth noting that for anyone listening, he really struggled between Final Fantasy VII and Persona 4 when I put this to him.
Yeah, Persona 4 is a game, like, I love the Persona series. 3 was my first one, which I also really, really, really love. But 4 tops it for me. And I guess the reason for that is just because coincidentally, the times I've played Persona 4, at least most of the time I played Persona 4, is when I've been going through a tough time, and the fact that Persona 4 is about a bunch of high school kids, and it's about a lot of it is about growing up, or at least themes that you can attribute to growing up, and discovering yourself, finding yourself, all that kind of stuff, among other things. It's those kind of themes kind of really resonated with me when I wasn't, for lack of a better term, feeling my best, and helped me really, really get through some tough times. And it's really kind of heartfelt. And the fact, as I mentioned before, it's the fact that you have school kids growing up it means that every character goes through something that you can relate to growing up. Whether spoilers, whether it be Yosuke moving home, knowing nobody in his new environment, coming from a big city to a country town where there's nothing to do. He feels completely like a fish out of water. To Yukiko's sense of obligation to do what family wants her to do, even though she may not want to. And you go through every character. There's, even if you don't necessarily like that character, there is something in them that they go through that you can relate to, and then through that you grow to those characters, and it's a story about hanging out with your school friends, and then at the end of it all, like school, you go your separate ways. So it's kind of, again, bittersweet like that. And it's just a very cleverly designed game. Yeah, I did have trouble picking between Persona 4 and Final Fantasy VII, but for slightly different reasons. Persona 4, I think, has more personal resonance with me, mostly because of what I just mentioned and how it affected me at certain points in my life. And I could easily talk as much as I have for Final Fantasy VII as I could for Persona 4 and all its meanings and all that kind of stuff. But Final Fantasy, whenever anyone asks me whenever anyone asks me what my favorite game is, it's almost like it's a reflex reaction. I'll say Final Fantasy VII, even without thinking it. And it's because it is, it is my favorite game. I can go back and play it. I mean, I'm playing it right now on iOS, and I love it as much now as I've always have. And it's, I owe so much to that game that it's even, I've probably played technically superior games. I've, graphically superior games, made better design games, better written, whatever. But that game changed my life. And I don't think, even like the way my mind works and the way maybe I am as a person, I think I might even be a completely different person if I hadn't played that game, let alone be in the position that I am in my life. So, yeah, while Persona 4 has the most emotional resonance, Final Fantasy VII has affected my life, I think, in a much bigger way. And for that, that's why it's my favorite game, and also why, I'm so thankful to it. I owe that game too much.
Needless to say, top 3 games: Final Fantasy VII, Persona 4, Wind Waker, in that order?
Yes, in that order.
Now, many years ago, Square Enix released a groundbreaking title that went on to become one of the most beloved games in PlayStation and video game history. Tonight, I am proud to announce that by popular demand, we have a very special treat for everyone.
Long ago, we looked upon a foreboding sky. The memory of the star that threatened all burns eternal in our hearts. In its wake came an age of silence. Yet with each fond remembrance, we knew those encountered were not forgotten. That someday we would see them again. Perhaps it was no more than wishful thinking. But after the long calm, there are now the beginnings of a stir. The reunion at hand may bring joy. It may bring fear. But let us embrace whatever it brings. For they are coming back. At last, the promise has been made.
A little bit of excitement. We're proud to announce that Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming first to PlayStation 4.
Like, as I mentioned the remake, and obviously I'm not going to ask you for details because it's obviously still too soon, but like, as someone who loves, like, Final Fantasy VII, as someone who loves and breathes Final Fantasy VII, both personally and from a professional perspective, like, when you were first told, like, there was going to be a remake happening, like, what was your first kind of internal reaction to it in your mind, going like I would assume the first obvious like reaction was, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, something like that.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh my god, you're not fucking with me, mate. Don't joke about that shit. Don't joke about that shit.
Yeah,
I think those were almost my exact words.
Like, because it's been joked about so much now up until it was announced at E3, like for 10 years. Like, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. It may happen. Nope, not going to happen. Oh, maybe happen. It's happening.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things that even if you kind of knew it would happen, it's like, is it really? Is it? Because of that, you've heard it so much that it's not happening. It's like, wait, it's now happening. It actually is. Really?
That kind of that folklore has become real.
Yeah. Oh man, I was and still am so excited. I mean, yeah, like I said before, like Final Fantasy VII is the game that it changed my life. If I had not played Final Fantasy VII, I would not see video games the way I do now as a medium, as an artistic medium, as you know, in terms of storytelling and everything. I would not be into games as much, probably, as I am now, and therefore I would not be in my career if it were not for Final Fantasy VII. So it's like an artist, like a singer or a band that can attribute that their whole career was from that single. That single, they got to number one that time, that week. It's what caused their career. You know, if like I suppose like the Killers from Mr. Brightside, let's say that if they hadn't done that song, would they be where they are now? And it's like, if I hadn't played Final Fantasy VII, would I be where I am right now? Probably not. No. Actually, most certainly not.
Yeah.
So to see it coming back, I'm just overjoyed. I am overjoyed. And as we touched upon before, like for a younger generation, for people who have only heard about this amazing game, and for whatever reason, have not played it, now is the chance that they can play it and see what the fuss is about. And yeah, I'm just overjoyed that more people can experience my favorite game.
What do you see the legacy for Final Fantasy VII being, and that the legacy that perhaps the remake will carry into, the kind of legacy the remake will carry into?
Oh man, I guess with the legacy of because Final Fantasy VII was such a big game. I guess the legacy. I don't want to big it up too much, but I almost accredit like the entire JRPG scene in the West is Final Fantasy VII's legacy. Because think about it, if that game had not come out and been as big as it is, and as I was saying before, it was like, why is Final Fantasy VII so revered and why is it so big? It's because it epitomizes PlayStation in the 90s, or and video games. If and if it hadn't come out, would JRPGs, would they be as big? Would they come out in the West? I mean, because Final Fantasy VII was the first Final Fantasy game in Europe, the biggest JRPG. I think, well, definitely at the time. If it didn't come out or if it wasn't successful, would it be just like it was before then? Now, if that made sense, that did make sense. Yeah. So it's like I would almost accredit that, the JRPG scene as its legacy. And I hope that the remake, along with Final Fantasy 15, will revitalize the JRPG genre in the West and make it as big as it used to be. Because remember, there was, after Final Fantasy VII came out, and when 8, 9, 10 came out, we had tons of RPGs coming out. I just mentioned a few that I got into on the PS1, and you had loads on the PS2. You had the Shadow Hearts games. You had obviously the sequels, like Grandia 2 and all those other games. And I would love to see JRPGs come back in a big way like they used to. Because in the last generation on PS3 and Xbox 360, there were some big ones. You had your Lost Odysseys, you had the Square Enix titles, you had your Star Oceans, Final Fantasy 13, obviously. But it was nowhere near the quantity, arguably, but the quantity at least was nowhere near as much as it used to be, because the JRPG genre has become a lot more niche. And I would hope that the legacy of Final Fantasy VII remake, along with Final Fantasy 15, would help bring back the glory of the JRPG, or at least put more of a spotlight on JRPGs that the mainstream gaming audience will take notice. Follow me on Twitter if you want. I'm at DM Seto. Please follow me. Keep up to date with everything Square Enix is doing. Keep an eye on all Final Fantasy games. There's plenty of great stuff coming. Obviously Final Fantasy VII Remake. Woo! Final Fantasy 15. Woo! Final Fantasy Explorers. Yay! And as well, plenty more in the future, hopefully. Otherwise, I'll be out of a job. So please buy our games and keep me employed.
Thanks for listening to my favourite game. Next week, Robin Haneke on Katamari Damacy. Until next week, bye bye.